Welcome back. You're watching Network Africa here on Channels Television. So let's get back to that story. South Africa's Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene being sacked, or rather, in President Jacob Zuma's words, being moved to another strategic position. The president did not explain why Nene has been moved to another strategic position. But there are critics who say that he's been the only one who's been able to stand against President Jacob Zuma. He was finance minister for just over 18 months and has already been able to stand his ground on the issues of wasteful government expenditure. He's openly criticized wage increases for public servants. He's also questioned the management of public utilities and opposed a bailout for the national airline, and did not approve a proposal to buy the president a new private jet. Before we went on the break, we're talking to Stanley Karombo, who's in Johannesburg. Stanley, thanks for joining us again. So let's begin from the top. The president has not explained why Nhlanhla Nene was sacked, but there are theories concerning why he was removed from office, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for hearing me. The line is very bad, but I can certainly say that the Minister of Finance, Captain Nene, has been fired by the president. There are no exact reason why he was fired, but there's always the speculation that he was fired, so that was deployed somewhere else. Also, the rumor is that Nene will be deployed to do a big thing, but it's all rumors. The president has not said anything as to where he's going to be deployed.
Well, very quickly before we lose you again, Nene was also being, before he was sacked, the rand was already falling, reaching its near lowest today, 15 to the dollar. Has it been entirely his fault what's happening to the economy?
So now the second of the minister has led to shuffle all around the country. After he was fired, the rand crashed to the fullest store of 15 rand to the dollar. And I can tell you, after this, South Africa is in a bad state.
And how is
because I can tell you that.
Oh dear, you're weaving in and out, Stanley. I'm hoping I can get this question in very quickly before we lose you. How are South Africans reacting to the news? We've seen the comments online from political parties who are criticizing his sack, saying that it's because he's been able to stand against the president and that the president has shown that he is not able to make the right decisions. But what are the people saying?
The South Africans have not taken this lightly, and some of the South Africans have also established or made up a hashtag that brings if Nene goes, we go too. Meaning to say that they're not happy with the thing or the plan of the Minister of Finance Secretary.
Stanley Karombo, thank you for joining us on Network Africa. Well, back to other stories now. December 9th, the United Nations marked its first observance to commemorate all victims of genocide. The day was established during the UN General Assembly this September, following a recommendation by the Human Rights Council. We have a message from the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who said that this is the ideal time to reaffirm our commitment to prevent this serious international crime, honor the memory of the victims, and reaffirm the rights to remedies and reparation as recognized in international law. Mr. Ki-moon says preventing genocide means paying more attention to the warning signs and being prepared to take immediate action to address them. He says this is the spirit of his Human Rights Upfront initiative.
By the outpouring of hostility, xenophobia, and intolerance that we have witnessed in recent weeks and in recent months, in response to the flight of refugees and migrants to Europe, and in response to terrorist attacks by violent extremists. Here in the United States, even, we have witnessed such a type of discourse. This manipulation of people's concern for political gain is sickening. And as we know from the past, it is also dangerous.
A message from the UN Security Council marking the first United Nations Day commemorating all victims of genocide. And the UN authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo have arrested a main suspect in the Rwandan genocide. He's Ladislas Ntaganzwa, a former mayor accused of killing thousands of people and organizing mass rapes in 1994. He's one of 9 suspects wanted by the UN, which is still looking for the others. And before now, the US had placed a bounty on his head amounting to $5 million.
Tribunal closes after having contributed significantly in ensuring that there is accountability, who played a leading role in the genocide against the Tutsis in 1994. It also comes to an end after having made a significant contribution in the development of the jurisprudence of international criminal law, particularly in relation to genocide, defining, explaining the elements of the crime of genocide in the area of the linkage between sexual violence and genocide, etc. And I think also in developing many good practices which provide useful lessons for national and international jurisdictions in carrying forward this global struggle for justice and accountability.
And away from the continent's political and security issues, Alan, the famous cub which won a BBC wildlife program, is dead. He had just recovered from a bout of poisoning and was, however, not the cause of his death. Alan was in Kenya. He was hurt in a clash with a buffalo herd and a vet was forced to euthanize him. The poisoning is alleged to have taken place after the herdsman illegally brought cattle onto the reserve and 3 were killed by the lions. The herdsmen Siminde Naruri and Kulangash Toposare are charged of lacing one of the carcasses with pesticides. Maasai representatives say they do not have enough grazing land for their cattle and are forced to take their animals into lion territory after dark. Back home in Nigeria, officials of the government agencies are urging the federal government not to drop the ball in the fight against corruption. The Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NATI, decried the level of financial corruption in the nation's oil and gas sector. Meanwhile, at a separate event, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission organized a walk to create awareness of the anti-corruption crusade.
The 2015 International Anti-Corruption Day celebration is aimed at creating awareness on international efforts to break the chains of corruption. But attention here was fixed on NATI as the representative of the Executive Secretary spoke on the agency's findings in the oil and gas sector in the last 13 years.
The disclosures from these independent audits showed that the difference between what companies paid to government and what government disclosed that it received in 13 years will be put at about $9.8 billion. This difference was as a result of underpayments, under-assessment of taxes, and other process lapses. NATI, working closely with the relevant government agencies, have so far recovered $2.4 billion into the federal government coffers from this $9.8 billion that is to be recovered.
An official of the Technical Unit on Governance Anti-Corruption Reform, TUGA, also emphasized the need to remind the government to deliver on its campaign promise to fight corruption headlong.
When President Buhari and the distinguished vice presidents were campaigning, they made a promise that one of the first activities they are going to implement is to give Nigerians a national strategy to combat corruption. Please let us continue to remind them that they must keep that promise.
Meanwhile, the chairman of the NBA Anti-Corruption Commission advocates for a synergy among government agencies fighting corruption.
At this point in time, yes, we have anti-corruption agencies. With what we have, what I think is best at this point in time is to ensure that there is proper synergy, proper cooperation, so to ensure that they all do their bits to ensure that the society is better for it.
Earlier, staff of the EFCC also embarked on an anti-corruption awareness rally. Away from creating that awareness, one crucial question remains.
How will you fight corruption irrespective of who is involved?
That should be a question for another day.
The EFCC and ICPC are the two principal anti-graft agencies in Nigeria, which some analysts have said grappled with poor finances to fight corruption.
Stop it now from here!
And as we end the program today, let's look at our question for the day. A really interesting topic. Do you think Zimbabwe's ruling party, the ZANU-PF, will split up? That's based on the story earlier today about President Robert Mugabe telling the party members today that they need to avoid that there have been divisions within the party. He said that there are several factions which are meeting openly and secretly maneuvering to secure influential positions. Remember, the ZANU-PF has been in power for as long as President Robert Mugabe has been in power, which is since 1980. Tell us your thoughts. Send your comments to Network Africa at channelstv.com or tweet at me at Amarachi_Ubani. Thanks for watching.